So you've now made the decision to have the double mastectomy and you have a date.
I do.
What are your feelings? What are your thoughts at this point?
It was a big decision to figure out whether it was, going through radiation. I'm fortunate to not have to have chemo. And so then the decision came down to radiation or the double mastectomy.
Right.
There's enough noise, as they call it, around my original tumor site that the double mastectomy really is the best direction. Some of the things that we don't always talk about with breast cancer is what's called dense boobs, and that's what I have. My breast tissue is very dense, and so it makes it really difficult to see a straight mammogram. So there's always follow-up mammograms. There's usually MRIs that are needed, or sometimes ultrasounds that are needed, and so the ability to have a quick mammogram and be done doesn't happen all the time with dense breast tissue. And so really, in talking with my oncologist and the breast surgeon, they said, this would be really hard to detect another tumor moving forward. And so for me, and peace of mind has been a big part of this. That's the thing I will say when I've had conversations with the doctors, where I went into this thinking if I said I wanted a double mastectomy, I was really fearful that someone was going to try to talk me out of it. And that's not been the case at all. What has really been the case is you need to do what gives you the best peace of mind. And so for me, knowing that there has been a number of times where I've had to be called back for abnormal mammograms, this is the peace of mind where we can be able to say, this is the course of action. And then following that will be hormone therapy treatment.
And as I'm sure you've spoken to other breast cancer survivors who have not made that decision, who probably really worry every few months.
Yeah. I mean, that there is that piece of it, the ability to know that, and I've always said this along this entire journey, this is how I am moving through this journey. So
Correct.
For me, there's no judgment if people say, I don't want to walk down that road. I tend to be a little bit more, this is the final step. This is how I'm going to handle it. Because of that, I did not want to continue to sit in a space of unknown. That's been one of the hardest pieces of all of this, is being diagnosed in July and knowing that my date is coming up at the beginning of December. When I finally got my surgery date, there was a totally different way that I was able to sleep. There was a different way I was able to move through my days. My ex-husband's uncle said to me, you will never get to say you don't have cancer in your lifetime. What I now can say is, yes, I have cancer and I have a plan. And that has been really important to start to put some of those things in place. I've talked with women who wish they had done the double mastectomy. I've talked with women who have done a single mastectomy. I've talked with women who have said, I'm really glad I didn't, and I just did radiation, and I don't mind having to go back. And so I think it's really about personal choice. And I don't know as though 25 years ago, that was such the avenue that doctors were walking.
As you know, I had cancer and I had to have a hysterectomy. I had to have a hysterectomy and my insides were removed. Breast cancer is very out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does that feel? I mean, nobody can tell by looking at me,
Right.
but maybe for a while they may be able to tell looking at you.
Yeah.
What does that feel like for you?
It's the reality of where things are. My firm belief is that I was given breasts to be able to breastfeed my children. And so I've really looked at it pretty pragmatically, in that I've raised my boys and they did their job. And it's going to be, here's the piece that I can sit and talk about, but I'm not probably going to really be able to answer that question until I'm in it. Because for now, I wake up and every day I just know that there's going to be a surgery. In the in-between, some people choose to have reconstructive surgery. Some people choose not to.
And you've decided
and I've decided to do reconstruction. And, my mom and I have a lot of conversations around it. We have a good friend who did not do reconstruction. And my mom says, you're young and you are someone who is active in the community, and I really feel, for me, that's the right decision. And there's so many different ways that that can happen as well. So it's been this really interesting journey. But yes, absolutely. And I've said this to several people, because I don't have to have chemotherapy. The choice that I made to share my story puts me out there in a different light. I think it's so important to talk about this, because even this weekend, I said to someone, I was sharing my story, and she said, gosh, I'm 4 years behind on my mammogram. And I said, please go schedule your mammogram. And I've made a commitment when I'm having those conversations to put a calendar reminder, and I follow up with folks who haven't had a mammogram, but I know it's putting me out in a different light. Walking down the street, if you're not watching this, if you don't know my story, you have no idea anything's wrong with me. I know that that could shift once the surgery happens. And obviously, there's special things you can buy and clothes you can wear differently. But I'm sure there will be the impact when the surgery is over and in the in-between, because it's several months where there will be sort of a holding pattern where my surgeries will be complete.
And I'd love to talk to you more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. This for me is about educating. I walked into this completely blind, having no idea. I mean, I have a distant cousin who had breast cancer and was very supportive when she was going through it. But I myself didn't even ask a lot of questions and had no idea what she truly was going through. And so if this can be a tool where people can understand, and again, my journey is my journey. It could be different for somebody else, but just this baseline information, I think, is so important to get out to the young community and the old community, because it can touch everybody.
So what's the next phase?
So I will have surgery in the beginning of December, and the bilateral mastectomy will take place. And then following that, because I'm having reconstructive surgery, there's a couple different ways that it can happen. One is called a flap surgery, where they actually use your own skin and tissue to rebuild. I don't have enough skin on my stomach to have that happen. And so there's something called expanders that they will put in, which will help to reshape my skin so that I can eventually have reconstructive surgery. And so it's a long surgery, that one day. It's overnight in the hospital, and then it's...
That's it? Overnight in the hospital?
Overnight, just overnight, as long as everything goes well. And then it will be multiple visits back to the plastic surgeon's office and the breast surgeon's office, just to make sure that the drains and everything are working properly. And then in March, there will be another surgery to complete the reconstruction.
For people who have gone through it, how are they preparing you?
Everyone is, everyone has been great. When I have talked, and I've placed some phone calls to some amazing supports in my life who have come through on the other side of breast cancer, some recently, some that have, been survivors for a number of years. And everyone's really wonderful about sharing advice or saying, hey, this really, one of the things that has been across the board is get a mastectomy pillow, because when you're in the car, you're going to need that extra cushioning when you leave the hospital. And so little things like that, where having special shirts and having a place to put the drain pouches and making sure that I have something for the shower when I shower, all these little pieces. The other thing that people have been really helpful about is helping me understand how things impacted them, but not saying this is what's going to happen to you. I've been really grateful for my friends who are survivors who have said, this was my experience, but it doesn't mean it's going to be yours. The hormone therapy treatment that I'm going to be on is going to put me into menopause, and that is going to be a whole new journey. And so that's a whole nother end of things that will come after the surgery. And so people have said, this is what worked for me. This is how I manage the hot flashes. And, all women are going to go through menopause. I just thought I had a few more years till I thought it was going to be coming. And so people have been great. My one friend in particular, her mother she and her sister both had breast cancer, and her dad and I ran into one another at the Tidewater, and he said, don't count my wife out. She's walked this road with 2 girls, and so it's not only the support of someone who's gone through it, but it's also offering the support of a mom who has gone through it with her daughters. And so that's been helpful for me, because then I could say to my mom, hey, you know, and these folks happen to live down the street from me. And so it's just been a really warm and welcoming community. And more than anything, what they've offered me is courage and support. And being able to say, you've got this, and you're going to get through this, and yep, it's going to suck, you know. And that's a piece that I know about any journey that we're on.
Right.
There's going to be hard moments, but the ability to know that I have this complete army of people on the other side who will support me in all those uncomfortable, ugly, and yucky moments.